Hi, this is Rahul Jindal with FedSync, and today we're going to continue our conversation on the Paycheck Protection Program and the technology that FedSync developed around it. Specifically, this conversation is going to focus on the forgiveness aspect of the application and the management of that process. So, as previously, the applicant would register and then obtain access to the platform by coming to this main page. They go ahead and log in. This is essentially the dashboard that the user will see. Once they come into the application, they're going to go ahead and start in a new forgiveness application. And why don't we go ahead and do that, although we have a application that we've already started. First, the borrower will go ahead and key in their business information. All right, here we are. We filled in some information for this borrower. Go ahead and hit submit. We'll go back to the main dashboard. What you'll see is another application that's just established right now, which is the second one. Go ahead and pull up the application. We'll start the forgiveness application here by completing each one of these sections. Go ahead and start pulling in the information. I'm going to go ahead and start filling out this particular section. This is a section focused on the business's revenue. So we're going to go ahead and assume that this is an existing business, and we're going to capture revenue between February 2019 and June 2019, and assume the business had a normalized business revenue of 1.5 million for that period, and that they had a total of 40 employees during that period on average. And during the impacted period, for the period which is called the covered period, they're requesting the forgiveness of. We're going to assume that they had some revenue, and this is the actual revenue that they earned during that period. And that period is of 8 weeks, so we're going to go ahead and assume that maybe they earned $300,000 in revenue. They were not 100% shut down during that period. All right, continuing forward on the loan information, we're going to come up and fill out the current loan information with the SBA. Okay. I'm going to go and loan amount. Let's assume they hadn't borrowed $500,000 against their calculations from prior. The disbursement of the loan, we'll go ahead and put in a date of it happened 2 months ago, maybe. Say the fifth. Number of employees at the time of location. Well, we'll go ahead and assume they were impacted, but they only had 10 employees at the time of the application. And at the time of the forgiveness, they had 33 employees. They didn't have any advance amount, and that's not applicable. All right. As you can see that it says incomplete because we have it's not applicable. All right, payroll details. What is the frequency with which the paid? We assume they're going to be paid bi-monthly. We're going to go ahead and assume that the borrower is going to use the regular covered period, which is the day of the loan being dispersed, and we have 56 days to spend the money since. So earlier we had noted that the loan was dispersed on April 14th. So 8 weeks since, or 56 days from there, is when they apply for the disbursement. For the loan forgiveness. In this case, we're going to go ahead and assume that 30 days was here, and then therefore 26 days and thereafter is somewhere here. We'll just make it up. The borrower received? No. All right. Non-payroll related costs. So any business related costs that are allowed by the law. So we're going to assume that they paid $1,000 in interest during that period. They paid $3,500 in rent, they had facility, and they paid $200 in utilities. Again, all for the covered period. All right. It asks for other details around other non-compensation to the employees. This is not related to cash compensation. So we're going to assume that the employer paid for the portion of the employee's health insurance. This is the employer portion only. So go ahead and assume with 35 people for 2 months that they probably ended up paying $6,000. This is for retirement plans. Maybe they paid $4,000. And then if they had any business taxes, employer related taxes for state and local, that's that. All right. Here they need to go ahead and key in their owners on the business. I'm going to go ahead and assume this is first name, ownership 100%. Okay. Let's make up some information, and that they were paid $17,000 for the period. Now I'm putting in a number. I'll throw an error because the law says that the compensation cannot exceed. So if you paid more than $17,000, I'm going to go ahead and max it out. $15,385 for the particular period. All right. Now, for all the information beneath this section is where there's the nitty-gritty of calculating the actual amount paid, the employees that were eligible, the employees that existed during the period of forgiveness or covered period, and gathering that information. So we've created an Excel document that covers all this requirement, and the borrower can go and download this information and key in the details, and thereafter those details. So this is the file that was just downloaded. Within the Excel workbook, there's a README tab. It has been set up to be locked just to sort of reduce any chance of error. These are the 4 tables that need to be filled out as applicable. Table A and B are likely applicable to, table 1 and 2 are likely applicable to all borrowers looking for forgiveness. And then there are the counts of table, the FTE, and then the safe harbor of the FTE may not be. So in this particular table, the borrower will go ahead and list all their employees that received less than $100,000 in annual wages in 2019 and were not employed by the borrower, and or they were not employed by the borrower in 2019. This is set up by SBA's regulation of how they need to capture information. So the basic set of information that the person is capturing is here. In order to calculate what is the wage reduction amount, they'll have to sort of go through this set of questionnaire. So in this case, we're going to assume John Doe. So John Doe had a situation where they had a $72,000 annual wage during the forgiveness period, but prior to the period of the forgiveness, they had a wage of $97,000 between January 1st and March 31st. Hence, they need to go continue down their analysis. And then step 2, they need to enter the wage they were paid as of February 15, 2020. And then the annual wage they were earning between February 15 and April 26. If it happens to be something that is greater than or equal to, then the step is being asked for. Then they need to go and enter the wage as of June 30th. Then if that sort of leads to the next step, then they need to go to step 3 and continue forward. In this case, they need to apply the amount which is auto-calculated by 75%. This is sort of that minimum floor before any adjustments have to be done. And it seems like the maximum adjustment that needs to be done for this particular individual is $750. Now, it happens to be that they're paying salary. This is $750 for the whole year. This is for the period itself. So this is the amount that needs to be keyed in to this field. This particular box up here, these are the 3 boxes which we're going to capture the information and key into our application on the web. So box 1, 2, and 3, box 4 and 5, and then if it's applicable, this line 11 number, which is a subtotal again, and then step 1, 2, and 3 subtotals. So this workbook is set up to sort of guide you and capture the information and then give you the subtotals. This is a subtotal for everything below, of course, excluding the example. So having said that, we'll go ahead and edit this information. We're going to go and make up the information without putting in a bunch of details about the employee. So the cash compensation, we're going to assume for those employees earning less than $100,000 and were not employed in 2019 for the period of those 8 weeks. We're going to go ahead and assume that was roughly $350,000. And how many employees? We're going to go ahead and assume that the average FTE was 35 employees. Okay, is the average wage less than 75% for any of these employees? And we're going to assume no. So that means we're not making any adjustments to it. So this essentially is not applicable. You can leave that to be 0. So this is a question about which employees earned more than 100,000 during the period and the total cash compensation to them. So we're going to say the total cash compensation to such employees was $50,000. This does not include the owner of the business, which is a separate one. And then enter the average FTE number of employees. We'll just go ahead and assume there are 4 employees that were in this situation. Let's adjust this downward to 31. All right, so we've got full-time equivalent. No, we don't technically, because essentially all of the people that we paid. Okay, so we need to answer this question actually. If you have not reduced number of employees between January 1st and the current period, say yes. So we're going to assume we did reduce employees. So the question then says, okay, enter the borrower's total average employee during this period. And, we're going to assume 40 because that's what we started with. Enter the borrower's total employee during February 15 period. We're just going to say 40. So if it happens to be, if step 2 is greater than step 1, then step 4. Otherwise, so it needs to go to step 4 actually. So actually, according to this, it's not applicable. So we'll go ahead and put this in here and say it's not applicable, and we're going to have 35 employees during that period and 35 that we started with, which calculates to be 1.1. All right, so this is the summary of the application. That's all the information that needs to be keyed in above. The application says that you have $412,000 in employee costs. You have these in non-payroll costs, and you don't have any wage reduction. So your total amount that you're looking for forgiveness is $416,500. Now, therefore, the modified amount based on if you had any employee reduction is still the same. So we didn't end up reducing any employees based on our calculations. So it's $416,500. The loan amount that we originally obtained was $500,000. And based on the payroll cost of 75% requirement, which is this line divided by, this is the maximum that will be forgivable, assuming that these numbers were higher. So here, hence the law says take the minimum of the 3, line 8, 9, and 10, and here it is. Now, what we have as in something what we call is a revenue impact analysis. As you recall, at the top of the application, we captured information about how did the business actually perform. So this assumption of loan forgiveness has zero analysis or zero impact analysis of revenue. So this assumes that the business was 100% shut down, which is certainly the case for some businesses, but not for all that are in this program that have received money. So not to give some businesses that are not impacted 100% by COVID-19 and having a business shut down for the whole period, we're going to have to do an impact analysis to see if they earned revenue to cover some of that already payroll costs. So in this scenario, this particular business has a normal revenue of $1.5 million for a whole period of 40 weeks. And in this situation, in this situation, they had 19 weeks and 40 employees during that period. So that equates to a weekly revenue of $1,973. In this particular scenario, we know that there's 8 weeks for the reference period, which is normal, which is what the forgiveness period is going to be, is 8 weeks. And they had 35 employees. So using this weekly number per employee on normalized situation of revenue, we go and project forward what their revenue should look like for the 2 weeks period. The 8 weeks period, which equates to 2 months for the period of the forgiveness, the covered period. And it happens to be that they should have, in normal business circumstance, $552,630 in revenue, but they had actually $300,000 in revenue. So they had a negative impact potentially due to COVID of only 45.71%, not 100%, which is important to know because otherwise we would be forgiving all their loan amount or the loan amount for their payroll costs, which doesn't have anything to do with the impact to business. And in this case, hence, we take the amount that they were approved for forgiveness and discount their revenue or discount their forgiveness amount further by the negative impact amount, which leads us to the adjusted forgiveness amount of $190,382. Now, this piece is not being considered by SBA or Treasury today, and we, of course, are urging SBA and Treasury to consider this, because this is really the revenue impact analysis to the business. It's necessary to understand if the business lost money 100%, 5%, 20%, and therefore we're not wasting the monies that taxpayers are funding for this particular program. And we're talking about $700 billion. So even if we can sort of come to this conclusion that there's maybe 30% of the businesses have revenue to cover their costs, we're talking about almost $200 billion in recovery potentially by having this additional consideration of revenue impact analysis. Outside of all this, then the borrower will go ahead and be uploading all their documentation as required by SBA, and here's a list of all those documentations and any additional ones that they'd like to upload. So we'll go ahead and leave that empty. The borrower can go and upload them for themselves. This is an optional thing, but essentially if for the principal owners of the business, and this is the classifications of who's considered a principal, go ahead and come and put some information about them. This is essentially optional, but at the same time might help SBA calculate and utilize this information for their benefit of doing some analysis. Thereafter, the representations and certifications have to be done. These are all the representation and certifications that SBA requires to be initial off on, so we're going to initial off on all these. And we'll go and hit submit. Once that is done, then the last step that's remaining is for the borrower to go and sign off on the actual application. So we'll go and sign off on the application. We'll assume date signed today. And we'll submit the application. Now, without any errors on the application, you'll get a submit application to bank button. And essentially this application will then be submitted forward to either SBA or your bank or your lending institution to go ahead and do the analysis. The analysis backend was covered through another video feed earlier, and we can certainly create another video on that as well. But this takes care of the application on the borrower side. And that is the full of the application that we're presenting today. Thank you very much for watching this video.